Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome once again to another episode on Life Signatures Radio. Episode number 1338, and in the episode we are deep in a series where we are talking about the five things that money may or may not buy that we take for granted on a daily basis. And I think all of us here are represented. There are many things that I can point out to you and tell you that you are taking those things for granted, and you might not agree until I point it to you. You might not even realize you're taking it for granted. The only way you're going to realize you took something for granted sometimes, it's late when that thing is gone out of your life. That's when you realize how important it was. And yet all along you're living as if you're entitled to it. It's a must for you to have it. It's a no-brainer. It's obvious. There are some things in life that are not necessarily that obvious. But at the moment we treat them as if they are obvious because of the abundance of the same. Let us look at one more thing that we might take for granted that money may or may not buy. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Life Signatures podcast with Lawrence Namale. Lawrence is a life coach, author, and keynote speaker who loves to tackle different topics on purpose, productivity, and resilience. His mission in life is to awaken all your boundless possibilities available in you. Life Signatures podcast is dedicated to bring to reality every single person who knows that deep down in their gut, there's got to be more to life than this. And now, here is your host, Lawrence Namale.
Sometimes our lives are filled with regrets, and for the most part, if you examine the source of the regrets, is taking things for granted. A healthy young man, very, very extremely healthy, takes his life for granted and goes and plays around and jokes around and sleeps around and gets a venereal disease. And in the moment when it's paining, in that moment, that's when the man regrets. Because the health that he now had is gone. Maybe temporarily, maybe permanently. It doesn't really matter. But at some point in time, he did take that health for granted. Every time we take things for granted, we are bound to regret. And every time there are regrets in our lives, chances are that we have taken something for granted. We've not given it the attention, the presence, the care, the appreciation that it needs to have. And therefore we'll lose it. And some of these things I've already mentioned. Maybe for you a recap. Number one, health. Speaking of the young man, health can easily be taken for granted because it's there in abundance. It is only the person who doesn't have health. In fact, by the way, I could even start going into the idea of people with disabilities. Someone doesn't have the gift of sight, cannot be able to see. And that's when they take sight for not necessarily for granted seriously. And then there's another man or there's another woman who has sight but takes it for granted, has a sense of hearing, takes it for granted, has a sense of smell. How many of you went through COVID? You suffered COVID, and he took from me the sense of smell. It's when that sense of smell is gone that's when you realize how important it was. So sometimes we do take our health for granted until the time that it's gone. That's when we realize how important it was. Money may or may not buy that health. That's the first thing. The second thing that we may take for granted is purpose, especially when it's not giving you the money that you want. God has given you some ambition, some desires, some passion for things that matter to you. And just the fact that they have not manifested money yet to you What do? You take it for granted, you dump it, and you go and you start looking for money in other avenues. And at the end of the day, when you look back in your life at your deathbed, you realize that the most important thing was the purpose that you dumped. You took it for granted. Today, I want us to look at another thing that is very powerful that we normally take for granted until it's gone. This, number 3, is family and relationships. This is very instructive. I've actually hinted about this over and over again in these episodes. When you take your spouse for granted, you see your spouse coming home, you don't care, you don't appreciate them, you look at them like there's nothing positive about them. When your spouse has lost their job, you call them names, you compare your spouse with other people's spouses, and you see that the other people are doing much better than you are, and you take your spouse for granted. At the same time, there are very many other single people in this world who desire that they could have a spouse in their life. In fact, there are some singles who look at your spouse and they desire that he or she was theirs. But you are in the place where you're supposed to be appreciating. You're supposed to be giving them the gift of presence. You're supposed to be churning out respect, churning out grace and mercy and love and kindness and all those things. And you are not. You're taking them for granted. Why? Because you wake up, they are there. You go to sleep, they are there. They are always there with you. Some spouses will know this. Sometimes your spouse goes abroad for studies or for work. That's when you realize how important they were, how much you miss them. It is only when they are taken away from you, one way or another, either permanently or temporarily, that you realize all along they were with me. What was most important to me than my spouse at that moment? Was it my job? Was it my pursuits? Was it my education? There's so much gold in family and relationships. In fact, if you have nothing in life but have these people who love and care for you, who appreciate you, who love and care for you as you love and care for them, your life is absolutely rich. We look for riches elsewhere, but within us, around us, in our vicinity, the riches are there. People filled with quality, if you could just give them the quality time. I know that this area of life cannot be quantifiable. It cannot be quantifiable how rich it is to have family. But you know it is. However, people normally say daily that your network is your net worth. You cannot quantify that. Relationships, family. I wouldn't want to approach this area of life from the business angle, but just from the angle of life itself. I don't want to talk about net worth, network, but just from the angle of life itself. Over 10 years ago, I had no money, no job, no nothing, a lot of bills to pay, and they were piling every single day. Someone came into my life that helped me through that tough season. A fellow human being. He will come and take me to the nearby supermarket and just say, take that trolley, a heavy trolley actually. Pick anything that you want. Put it in the trolley. I will pick anything. In fact, I will be scared of picking. He will be the one who will pick some things and just put them and pay for every single detail in there. That was a relationship that I cherish even up to today. Relationships can be very rich and very healthy. But the thing is, when we have them, colleagues at work, spouses at home, children at home, parents at home, members of the same fellowship at church or at the mosque, when we have these people, it is easy easy to take them for granted. Friends that care about us. Money may or may not buy these people. In fact, when it comes to friends, to relationships and family, I don't think money can actually buy this, because friendships and relationships are formed from something else other than money. They are formed from the intangibles. They are formed from values. They are formed from agreements, invisible agreements. They are formed from matching, invisible matching that is going on. Money cannot buy this. The thing is, when we have them, how much do we appreciate them? How much time do we take to really look back and be grateful for these relationships that we have? You have children in your house, you don't appreciate them. Someone has been married for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25, 30 years. They have been praying to God for kids. They don't have kids. They have not been able to conceive. Someone has kids, and they taking them for granted. It's another area of life that we really need to start experiencing gratitude, or start taking some time and be grateful for in our lives. Tomorrow we're going to look at another area that money may or may not buy, but sometimes we take it for granted. Why are we doing this? We are learning to inject some form of gratitude into our lives. So until then, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Life Signatures Radio. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to Life Signatures Radio on iTunes, Stitcher, or visit our website at lifesignatures.libsyn.com. Life Signatures Radio, fresh, clean, and inspiring.